So yes, so I think we'll go ahead and invite the panelists onto the stage. We, of course, started with the presentation, and let's invite them right away. Starting with the moderator for the session, we have with us a partner from ZS Associates. We have Mr. Tarun Pandey. Thank you for joining us today. And joining him are the panelists. I would once again request Mr. Arun Shastri to come back on the stage, please. I would also like to invite Mr. Amitabh Suri, the CEO for USPA Urban Brands Limited. Sugam Ansani, who's the Chief Brand Officer. Gurukirti Gurunathan, who's the co-founder for Carrot Lane, a Tanishq partnership. Suraj Bhatt, CEO, Ethnic Business for Aditya Birla Fashion Retail Limited. All right, Tarun, over to you.
All right, thanks everybody. So I'll lay down a little bit of ground rules for our panel. We'll make it non-sequential, very interactive. We'll try to jump across because we have representation from traditional retail trying to go big, omni-channel. We have representation from D2C, which is now, of course, trying to go on the physical side as well. So we have a lot of perspectives. We've got big international brands who made it big in India. So we have a lot of perspectives. So we like to, again, tap on the same themes. And one way I would characterize those themes are, how do you listen to what your customers want? How do you personalize? And how do you fulfill on that promise? So the first one is about being closer to consumers and their needs. The second piece is around personalization. And the third is very directly linked to supply chain and logistics. So maybe I can start with Amitabh and then, and that's by design, non-sequential order. And by the way, I've also created my own timer here just to make sure that we honor the time that we have. So Amitabh, of course, you brought in a big international brand to India, and you've been doing really well. In that whole journey, how do you listen to what consumers need? And the backdrop of this is that more than ever today, expressions from our consumers are proliferating in many, many ways. People are uploading sentiments and reviews. So it's not just traditional, market research, where we ask a bunch of people on what do you want, but there are many other ways. So any anecdotes or stories on how you stay close to consumers?
Thanks, Tarun. So interestingly, consumers are the heart of our business, clearly. We've been chasing that customer all along. I'll just go back a few years in history and say that it was a largely offline business where we brought a look and feel to the consumer and we kind of got hooked onto it. We assumed, as any other brand would, that what we did was perfectly correct. And since we sat on a position of authority with the consumer in the earlier days, it was more of a diktat of what we think is right for the consumer. Things have changed over the last decade. There's been an influx of a new generation coming in. Consumers have actually had a voice of their own, and social media has given them that platform. Very important for brands to be humble at this point in time and hear the consumer. When you say hear the consumer, you got to hear the consumer with what is relevant, because like data is a barrage, it just keeps coming in every direction. Now, I've got a word which is called the brand bias. Now, a brand bias is something we have to kind of intuitively make for a brand and say, let's filter any feedback coming from consumer through that, so we are able to, re-offer or reimagine the business we do with them. Second is that there has to be a genuine intent. Now, again, e-commerce, some people get it because that's the latest trend. At US Polo and Arvind, we believe that e-commerce is going to be one of our largest channels, and more than e-commerce is going to be direct to consumer. Now, in a direct to consumer scenario, e-commerce will play a big role. So the intent of listening to the consumer is as important as listening to the consumer. So for me, those are two takeaways. One is the brand bias, and two is the intent to listen to the consumer.
And how do you reinforce the value or the need for that in your organization?
So it's a pretty simple. Is that execution is the only way you can answer it. If I'm listening to a consumer, it's going to act out in my product profiling. It's going to act out in my product launches. Now, The fear in the offline world used to be that it's very difficult to bring something new in, right? You had to kind of do a lot of market research, say, am I ready for this product? Am I ready for this service right now? With the online onset, it's become cheaper. You can fail fast. And that to me is like probably the secret sauce. So if you are in that position to fail fast mentally, with the intent that the larger ambition is to do something different, then you will keep trying. So for us, it's the execution to me is more relevant than imagining things.
Absolutely. You know, we heard from a client in the FMCG space, and they make toothpaste, and they were so upset about the fact that they missed the boat on charcoal based toothpaste, and it led to a lot of themes. You could use NLP and fancy ways to do listening, but I think the answer was more in execution. At every touch point, are you bringing that knowledge? Any perspective to add here, Suraj? It's on.
Yeah. So I think one of the contexts we'll have to remember for any management practice, including listening to and understanding consumers, is that fashion and retail is essentially an entrepreneur's industry. Value gets created by propositions. 9 on 10 cases is an entrepreneur starting something. And that's how the philosophy of managers in the industry operates. It operates with a lot of gut, a lot of conviction that we know what works. So in that context, one has to bring in, I think the easiest way to do consumer understanding is a way that's natural to the managers there, which is to spend time with customers, be at stores and so on. Having said that, it's useful in the early life cycle stages of a brand and a business, but as you start achieving scale, it's not possible to do that beyond a point. That's when one needs structured ways of listening to customers. So at ABFRL, we have implemented what we call as mission happiness, that is about keeping the customer happy. And it's basically a variation of the Net Promoter Score system. And the way we institutionalize it in our various brands is, for example, in one of the businesses I would have run earlier, we would start a merchandise sell-through meeting with 2-hour presentations on what our customers gave feedback on in the last 30 days. And it would be highly structured. It would be perhaps around store experience. It would be around what they liked about a category. We would do analysis across 6 months on how, say, what customers are saying about, say, women's dresses. And then quickly moves into, because there's data and then there is the intuition of the manager, quickly moves into looking at the product, what's worked, what's not worked, trying to connect the dot between, the input that has come in, as structured as it can, from customer to what decisions you will take on product. So that's a bit of what we do.
And I guess it's even more critical for you, Suraj. Like, you're the CEO of the fast fashion business. So
yes, that was some time back.
It's faster.
One of the problems of not updating LinkedIn. But yeah, across businesses, and you're right, but since you asked the question on fast fashion, it is much, the pace of change of trend in that industry, in that division, in that segment is much faster. So you just need to be tremendously more agile as opposed to, say, some other businesses. So yeah.
And pardon my understanding, so what's the current role?
No, so it's all right. I manage the ethnic wear portfolio. This is a very recent development, so that's all right.
Got it. Any perspectives to add here, Sugam?
So apart from what Amitabh has already said and what Suraj has, I subscribe to both the views. At the same time, I think understanding your customer is a very extensive and detailed filtration process. Like Amitabh said, there's so much of information that's coming in 24/7. You got to filter out who do you want to listen to and to what extent do you want to listen to while having a brand bias as well. There are believers, that means customers who truly believe in your brand. There are jumpers who move brand to brand for an opportunity, and there are triers who probably trying your brand for the first time. I think once you've gone through an extensive filtration process and truly understand which is the kind of customer that you want to listen to, and you've created cohorts within your customer database, it needs to be backed by a very, very strong CRM, which is supposed to result into the final connect with the customer. And ensuring that you have loyalists who are sticking to the brand, who believe in the brand values. And you also try and bring in let's say, a certain amount of association with the customer, making the customer believe in what you do, which is more purpose-driven. So there are customers that you would want to retain. There are customers whom you would always want to stick by, who love your brand, who believe in your brand. While there are customers whom you may or may not want to listen to. So that filtration process at least becomes very, very important. That's apart from what both of the gentlemen said. I think for me that is extremely important, and that's what we are doing as of now.
Absolutely. We've seen stories where, and in fashion, for instance, for a certain client, the frequency of purchase is like 0.8 or 1.2 a year. Okay. We also saw that the one and dones, people who buy once and never come back, will remain one and done if you don't engage with them for the third time. And it depends on the sub, the category you're in. It would vary. Trying to address those one and dones differently than the loyalists, I think that's the key, right? That's the key in CRM. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the same time, because I think that question was partly for me because I am in the fast fashion world. I think how much do you want to listen to is also important, because you have a set of customers that are really aware.
Yeah.
They are aware of fashion, they are aware of trend, and they are probably one step ahead of you. But most of the customers actually many a times do not know what they want. So if you try to listen to everyone, you probably would tend to create something that's sometimes confusing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Guru actually does something which is the most difficult, if I had to imagine it, which is sell jewelry online, right? So, and he started as a digitally native player, as a partner of Tanish now. What are your views on this topic?
I think, it's the most difficult, and that's why we also exist, because there are not too many players who are ready to venture into that space. It's a very traditional industry, jewelry being one of the age-old industries, right? To modernize that, to have the entire ecosystem to modernize itself is a big challenge. The way we understand the consumer sentiment, there are traditional ways, of course, like the usual consumer research that people does, as well as our jewelry consultants who are the eyes and ears of the brand, right? And who are interacting with the consumers day in and day out. More than that, like Arun was pitching in this presentation, right? The consumers who visit us actually leave the data trails. That's the breadcrumb. If you start understanding that, you start mining it, you look for insights from the data that they leave on the website, on the apps, on their touch points with the showrooms, right? All of that plays a big role in understanding what they are talking about, what they are feeling about the brand. And always the culture that we have internally is, if one person is coming out and talking and complaining about us, which means 10 other people are not doing that. So you have to magnify that. At the same time, if there are 1,000 people talking about it in good favor, right? Talking about good thing about the brands, we think that, still it is a magnitude in promotion to, even the goodness also comes in large proportion. So ensuring that insights are generated using ML for the sentiment analysis that we do on the chat that happens, on the voice calls that happens, and also doing a keyword mapping. We look at the word cloud of what people are talking about. Just getting the insights from that itself is valuable to understand the sentiments of the consumers.
Very interesting story. We were doing the same thing for a client, and people complained about the comfort on the footwear, shoe category. And it turned out it was not the foam, it was not the outsole, it was the insole. Okay, and the point is, now of course in categories where there's a lot of data, the point is today you can nail down to a level where that for your brand, people like comfort in general, but when they say they don't like it, it's the insole. It's not overall, okay? But having said that, and we're doing the same in lingerie, and there it's like the nuances, because when you do primary market research, asking a focus group to express their requirements on lingerie, you only go as far. And what you discover by some of the techniques you said can be very powerful. Arun, you want to jump in with any thoughts?
Yeah, I think just wanted to characterize that there are two things that we're talking about here. One is how good is your listening function? And the second is, therefore, what do you do with it? How to measure how good your listening function is it's not that easy. How to measure what you do with it is a little bit easier. I think we have very age-old methods like NPS and so on that actually measure. Even there, NPS or customer churn or size of the basket, these are all extrinsic measures. But I think there are many good intrinsic measures. What is the cart abandonment rate? Things like that that you can also look at. Or how many consumers come in and engage, one and done. I think those sort of intrinsic measures also are good giveaways to how well you're engaging the customer.
I'll have a broad question on omni-channel. The background is, of course, when people added a channel, it was multi-channel. Then there was like omni-channel. But the point is, omni-channel is only successful as long as there's orchestration. The last thing customers want is that you've got 10 touch points, but they're not talking to each other. So in that, the broad question I had, maybe Suraj, I'll start with you, is that as you try to scale up your digital presence as well, and of course, between own stores and marketplaces, D2C, how do you make sure that this orchestration is happening?
So I think across businesses, I think for the consumer, we'll have to convert a framework called Omni-channel and talk about it in consumer language, say of convenience or quicker delivery and so on and so forth. To that extent, I think the way online is growing in India, still behind, say, the US or the West, I think it's quite clear that the rules of convenience and delivery time, etc., will slowly change. Consumer will start expecting more and more very quick. To that extent, I think we are invested in making all our businesses omni-channel and investing in the technology that is needed and the service infrastructure, the warehouse network strategy or the store network strategy for that. It's ongoing effort as and when we scale up our retail footprint and our online footprint.
Perfect. Sugam, thoughts there? And maybe I'll add on the flip to it. The complication now is that we had some stores, but now as we've gone digital, our consumers are in different corners of the country. So the implication on supply chain logistics is also very confounding. So how are you addressing that challenge?
So I think just add on to the set of woes that you just spoke about. I think there are also partner business.
Absolutely.
Right? It's your own retail, then it's your partner retail, and then you have offline partner retail, you have online partner retail. I think, so there was a decision that we took just around 6 months back to an effect that we will allow Omni returns anywhere. That was, I think, one of the boldest decisions that we've taken in a while. When we actually realized what was the percentage of Omni return that was not coming to the same store or same area or let's say the same entity as a business transaction, we realized that is it worth not doing that exchange and have a customer dissonance, or what is that cost that we will bear if we are to do it? We also need to understand that there is a considerable amount of financial discomfort that an organization goes through whenever you are selling from somewhere while returning from somewhere. So I think whosoever is listening, I think our government and our financial laws also need to be a little more conducive towards omni-channel. So at the end of the day, you have to take a tough call. How customer-centric do you want to be eventually? And what is the cost of it? We took that call, and we are yet to see the results. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of intricacies that are involved while you're going full omni-channel. But having said that, last statement, it's here to stay. Anywhere commerce is here to stay. It's something that the organizations and probably the laws need to change around it. The customer will keep expecting more and more.
And before I come to the rest of the panel, I was just reflecting, it's become a very difficult world, no? There are actually colleagues of people like Guru who are doing return analytics. That if you have a 5-star rating, the returns are very high. So it's better to have a 4.8 rating instead of a 5.0. This is the kind of world we live in. And if you look at the players here, we've got brands, we've got marketplaces, we've got mall operators, we've got D2C, right? We've got channel partners. But I do want to reinforce this theme with everybody that the phase of growth and optimism that all grounded on facts that we seeing in the Indian market for the next several years. All of these players in this ecosystem are out there to help each other. If a marketplace like a Myntra goes and creates awareness and a market in a remote part of the country, it's creating that need for the brand to go D2C as well. So that's the lens I think we're all talking, because the ecosystem is fairly complex, right? Having said that, maybe Guru, I'll come to you. You are backward integrated into jewelry manufacturing as well, right? Now from manufacturing, which means sourcing stuff. So from sourcing to last mile delivery, what's the secret algorithm that you have to manage the supply chain challenges of the future?
I think from a supply chain perspective, the biggest challenge that we are facing today is the quick commerce methodology or the consumer sentiment about that. Because jewelry traditionally for a made-to-order product takes at least a few days to manufacture, but people want it instantaneously. They started comparing with the quick commerce solutions that exist out there in the marketplace today. So we're kind of trying to shrink that timeline and ensuring that the manufacturing happens just in time and much faster, and that increases the inventory cost for the business also. Because if you want things to be delivered very quickly, then the sheer reason why we exist today, the digital versus the retail, is because we want to have lesser inventory in the retail locations. Jewelry, for that matter, traditionally is sold in very large retail spaces. I mean, the reason why we came digital only native brand is because we want to cut down that methodology and want to pass on the savings to the consumers. So the challenge there is to manufacture it very quickly and get it out there on time. And also, people are using it a lot for gifting occasions. And gifting runs with emotions, and they want it to be a specific time. So meeting that time-based delivery is very important. So we are working with integrated logistics partners, like to the likes of ClickPost and so on, which aggregates the supply chain for us. And we have our own logistics providers, self-logistics, which helps in creating a great consumer experience. And that control is only with us if we are able to manage that logistics operations. So throughout every point of presence, we have an integrated digital strategy, right from manufacturing till the logistics. It's all digitally driven and it's all on the cloud. So we don't, and the product that gets manufactured talks to the same system as the one which a merchandiser sees, as the system which actually publishes that on the website or on the apps or the point of sale that the consumer sees in the retail showroom. Only if you have that kind of a view of one system and not too many systems talking to each other, you can create a truly omni business. That's our learning over the period of time.
And Guru, if somebody from a supply chain function from a brick and mortar company is listening to you, he or she will be so envious. Because I can bet, and Amitabh, the question is coming to you, which is that from your JD Edwards system on sourcing to something on Anaplan on demand planning, to something in managers take on distribution, everything is of course siloed. And as you move towards the future that Guru is talking about, how do you move with that legacy infrastructure to ensure that last mile logistics on one end and sourcing on the other are geared to the needs of the customer? You can't change the stack overnight. So as a CEO, your priorities and how do they translate to your supply chain teams?
So thanks for the question. A very simple logic on this is that we are here to try and induce higher sales or higher turnover of business. Online stroke Omni is a channel. Now, we have to understand one thing, that we have built our businesses on a model on which Omni is coming and sitting on. So it's going to be an uncomfortable position for the starting. Now, I'll give you a few examples on that. Murphy's Law says that the stores who do very well offline also end up becoming the best stores for Omni. So it's not like the stores who are doing badly do well in Omni. It's the store who's actually got a Connaught Place in Delhi where there's enough and more traffic. Chances are that pin code will attract more Omni orders from it. Now, three things happen in a store is that you have now got a store manager and a bunch of sales staff, what you call CCAs in our store, whose job is to ensure the store is ready for consumers walking in. But they get distracted because they've got 50 orders, 60 orders to fulfill. Now you end up distracting your storefront, right? And as luck would have it, we've all made stores with very small backstock facilities. We've made stores with larger retail, more song and dance, more theater. And you say, no, backstock thoda kam rakho, chalega, itna mehenga rent hai, why would I spend money on a backstock? Today, it's coming to bite us and say that if you do not plan a backstock well, you're going to not be a very well supplied or a very well integrated omni-channel. So that's one learning. Learning two is that you've got to also understand that don't try and do too many things. Now I can't name the partner. One partner came and sold me an idea saying, I can give you a 30-minute delivery for a t-shirt you make. And it's going to cost you X rupees more. So I heard him, and he was sounding very passionate, a typical guy coming and selling his dream to you. And I said, but who wants a t-shirt in 30 minutes? Now, I'm not a Maggie noodle, or I'm not a FMCG soap brand. So sometimes product services are built which are not relevant to your category. Now, as a manager for a brand, you got to understand what works for your category, what does not work. It's a very intuitive, logical way of approaching it. So let's not try and hit every ball out of the park. Defend a few, take a few right, and hopefully you can stitch again a partnership which works. Because you got to keep looking at your financial metrics. You can't expect to kill yourself or make a loss-making proposition to please a possible customer somewhere in the country.
And in all of this, there are so many trade-offs between what the customer needs and what you can do. Pragmatism for sure is the key answer here. We want Rima to invite us again next year, so I'll stick to my time. My stopwatch says I have like 3-4 minutes remaining, so the last question to the panel. And also in the spirit of the fact that this is all about physical retail, right? So apologies if we talk digital a bit more, but that's critical for physical players as well. So the last question is on phygital, which is that how do you bring that experience on store? And we've seen it play out in different ways in fashion, accessories, beauty. Any thoughts on, of course, not what you're planning to do, but any reflections on what brands today can bring to the retail format when it comes to a phygital kind of an experience, in-store experience? Maybe I'll start sequentially with Suraj.
No, I think the stage we are in, most businesses, including large ones, seem to be rapidly expanding. So there is a much bigger non-data-led initiative for consumers, which is just to have availability. And that's the stage in which retail is in. So quite often, I think at this stage, it's more about solving fundamental issues. And consumers still love to shop in retail, right? And we've seen that bounce back like anything post Wave 3. So therefore, I think just getting your retail act right is one large initiative. And secondly, of course, figuring out in a market where 2 or 3 horizontal players or vertical fashion players have cornered a lot of the e-commerce business, how do you create your digital footprint is actually a big initiative. I think digital is important, it will evolve. I wonder whether we are at the life cycle stage where that's the most important thing.
Again, pragmatic, which is first get them to the stores, maximize on that, and within that, of course, you can continue to innovate more. Guru?
So my simple point would be that the lot of discovery happens online today, because that happens at the convenience of the customers in their setup, in their time zone, and so on, right? But the conversion happens a lot in the showrooms. That's what we have seen. More than 80% is online influenced orders in our business. So what it means is consumers are ready for this experience or the journey that starts from one channel to the other channel. And as an organization, we should cater to that. So we don't want them to be rediscovered as they walk into the showroom. We want to know a lot more about them as they walk into the showroom so that we can customize the needs, personalize for them. So for us, personalization is not a digital personalization. It's about human personalization. Really, there is a person who is talking to you, who understands what you want, what you feel, what you need, and what are you here to buy about. And knowing the past history of the customer through the digital means that they have browsed, they have added to wish list or cart, etc., and be able to cater to that need. So that's the connected experience which phygital should handle, is what I would say.
Perfect. Sugam?
I think with seamless commerce, with physical retail and digital getting intertwined with each other, I think it's not a decision whether what kind of role digital will play in the lives of the customer, because the customer is already living a digital life. More than, I think the brands are yet to catch up. I don't think so, at least I can talk about in India, I don't think so there's any brand as of now, including ours, our own, have actually started to keep pace with what the customer needs are. While at the same time, I have examples where, in the most expensive real estate in the world, let's say an Oxford Street or a Fifth Avenue in New York or somewhere, there are stores that do not sell any merchandise. They are only selling an experience. And I'm talking about Nike on Oxford Street. They do not have tills or cash counters or physical products. They're just selling an experience. They have a lot of 3D and AR and VR going on and various other things that are going on. So I think it's each brand's own journey, how they want the customer to experience this phygital. And eventually, it's a matter of choice and convenience that's left on the customer. And at the end of the day, if you know your customer well and you know the expectation of your customer well, you will be the quickest to take that journey.
Perfect. Amitabh.
One word that comes to my mind is subconscious commerce. Now, when you look at that, you're basically saying, how can I analyze my customer's demands before he has it? So you're doing what you call a predictive modeling at some point. Now, that is what is required in the physical retail, because a lot of customers who come to a physical store seem to be disappointed with the mix available to them or disappointed by the size availability or the product availability. So a physical store has got to start becoming far more intelligent. While we've got people who do our buying and they've got an Excel sheet and a lot of functions they work on, but they could do with some help if they really want to become very, very productive stores. On the other side, e-commerce has become such a convenience, and it's like a fast fashion model, not fashion, but fast throughput model. You got to slow it down a bit. So if you ask a brand, I rather have a website which mimics my store versus trying to compete with the online giants. So I could be differentiate there, where I can call you in, you slow your process down because you're in such a hurry. And for reasons I fail to understand, why are we in a hurry? So if you start giving an online model a place where a consumer can come and indulge, know the brand, hear some stories. Now, obviously, it's a very small pool compared to what you get in a big four format, what Suraj mentioned about the verticals, horizontals. But I'm sure there's a bunch of consumers who wants to do slow shopping online. So phygital to me will be role reverse at some point, where the stores have got to get more intelligent and not just rely upon old world charm of how buying happens and SAE hota hai types. At the same time, the retail, the online commerce must slow it down. If you slow it down, I'm sure consumers are going to enjoy both sides of the journey, and that will be another feather in our cap.
Brilliant perspective. Thanks a lot. Arun, any closing thoughts? So we are on time. Thanks for the panel, everybody. Any thoughts, Arun, before we wrap up?
If I could just summarize from the organization's perspective, I think what I'm hearing is at least two, among other things. One is that decisions that were perhaps intermittent in time now suddenly with the emergence of digital become more continuous in nature. I think we are seeing the emergence of that. Several examples, including what Guru's shared. And then the second thing is decisions that happened in silos cannot no longer afford to be in silos. They're actually linked in many ways. And I think that that's the common theme, irrespective of whether you're fast fashion or jewelry.
We are done, but thanks again, panelists. These are phenomenal insights, a lot of grounded, pragmatic philosophy on what it means to go omnichannel and the future of retail for India. Thanks a lot.